Okay, so let's look at getting over to Substance Painter now. We have UVs on this and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to want to export this as an OBJ. Just remember, if OBJ does not show up, you just want to go to your Windows Settings Preferences and Plugin Manager and just make sure that OBJ is on. You just got to find it in here. It's right there. Just make sure things are check marked for that. Okay, that's all good. Go to Object Mode, File, Export Selection. Okay, and I'm going to export it as _low. I already exported it, so I'm not going to do it again. But you just want to go in there and export it and make sure that you have your higher version named _high, and the lower one that you're exporting with your UVs and retopoed is _low. Okay, so Substance Painter, File, New, and this is always good to come in. You're gonna typically, most of the time, probably want to be in your PBR metallic roughness. So that's a good preset to be in. We're just going to stay in 1K for now. Just know that you can change that and go up to higher Ks. You can go to 2K or 4K. We don't have any maps like made from ZBrush or anything like that, so we're good. We just want to make sure we come up here and select and go find that _low. Okay, so we have that. And once we have that, so I did install this on my laptop, so it should mirror your view a little bit better. Let's come over to our texture settings, and let's come down to Bake Mesh Maps. Let's click on that, and let's come over here, and let's click this little file icon. So again, that was right there. That'll help us find our hide. So this is always good to have decent naming conventions, just so you know what you're looking for. So this is this was made again in Houdini, and then I took it over to ZBrush and decimated it and exported it, named it _high. Okay, so let's open that, and we can come down here. We could add a little bit of anti-aliasing, probably not a bad idea. And for right now, I think these are just okay for initial settings. So let's just go ahead and click Bake Initial Shading Group Mesh Maps. And so we'll see this start to look a little like the higher resolution version as that all gets imported. Okay, so we have that now in here, and we can see it looks a lot closer to our higher resolution version. And so let's go ahead and start getting some layers on here. So coming back to layers, let's go to, we're not going to really we're just going to use for right now their basic stuff that they've got in here. Just know they have all this stuff that we haven't really gone over, and brushes and that sort of stuff. We're just going to kind of go over the basics of getting some stuff to work for us procedurally. Okay, so let's do this concrete simple to start with. And so that gives me this kind of basic kind of mountain overlay, and whatever you need, you just kind of go find a material that's going to work for that. Okay, so let's do this concrete bear. Maybe we'll drop that in there. Okay, and let's add some masks. So if we come over here and go to Smart Masks, we can start to really dial in stuff. So maybe we want to do sand on that. Maybe we want to, we could undo that. We could look at other options. So Control Z, we could do occlusion strong. We could do ground dirt. They do give us a lot of really cool options. Maybe we'll do edges scratch and see what that does. That's kind of interesting. Kind of feels like it starts to expose some of the edges and things like that. Let's go back to Smart Materials, and let's add, maybe we could add a a dirt. So we get a dirt in there. So my point here not is really to get in here and to design all this, but again, just to kind of get in here and show you some of the ins and outs of all this sort of stuff. So don't forget you have like options too where you can add like your own masks and things like that, and you can actually make your own solids and your own layers and all that sort of stuff. So you could add like a fill layer here, and just kind of play around with all that. Come down, say what color do you want it to be. Maybe you could dial some of this sort of stuff in, so you could play with whatever you want your hues. So maybe you wanted something kind of dark and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's kind of get that more to like a dark brown or something. Now you have, just so you know, you have your metallic, right? And so this is like a shader too. You can start to, and this will affect your map. So you can come in here and like, what is this affecting? Is it going to affect your normals? Is it going to affect your metalness, your color, all this sort of stuff? So you can start to see like how even just coming down here and playing with some of these sliders is going to affect things. So you can also turn things off, like this does not affect color, this does not affect height, this does not affect roughness, this does not affect metal, and so or normal, and you can really start to like dial some of these kinds of things in too. And so from here, again, we could go back to our smart masks, and maybe this is where we want to use like the sand. And again, this is where you can play around with all this sort of stuff and see. And you can see with this roughness how it's kind of affecting the bump and the direction of the bump that we're getting and all that sort of stuff. And so a lot of things get in here and play with. So anyways, again, I don't want to get too much into designing, but just more of some of the what's and the things that you can kind of start to get in here to play with and whatnot. So let's do this. So you can see, starting to get our maps and things like that over here, and like how things are starting to look. And so yeah, play around with it, play around with these masks, and definitely get down here in some of the settings, and just know you can kind of come through and click through different things in your layers, just like in Photoshop, and you can start to expose and play with parameters of different, of like the masks and the material or the layer and all that sort of stuff. So get around and yeah, play with all that. Hopefully this has been helpful. Let's take a quick look on how we would export this stuff. We took a quick look, but I did want to show you a couple other quick things. So if we go to File and we go down to Export Textures, you're going to have these two tabs. And if you go over to Configuration, this can really be helpful in helping you know what maps you're going to export to. So knowing what shader or what renderer you're going to go to, right? So if we're going to go to Arnold and use that AI standard, this is great. So you're going to see we're going to get a base color. It's all underscore and what we're getting, metalness and roughness and normal, height, and emissive. So if you remember in the Arnold standard surface shader, there was very specific channels for all that sort of stuff. Well, you also have Unity. Unity doesn't give you as many, but it gives you some things that are specific for the shader that you'd be using in Unity, or if you're going into KeyShot or whatever package you're going to. So we even have things for Unreal and so forth. So for right now, I'm just going to do this AI standard, and so this shows me what I'm getting. But if I want to use that, what I need to do is I need to come over here and look for, hold on, let's see, do that again. First off, let's do this. Let's just make sure we're saving this to where we want this to go. So let's go to So we just save this. Let's make a maps folder. Okay. And once we got that folder selected, we just go to select. Okay, so to configure that though, we want to click this little arrow here, right? And so since I'm doing the AI standard surface, like if that's what I wanted to export to, I'd want to change that configuration to that. So again, we could change some of these things. We can even get up to 8K, but I'm going to just keep it all at 1K. And we're just going to click export. And it should have made me those maps. Oops. And so you can see, and now I have all those maps made specifically for the UVs that I laid out. So again, so if we go back to Maya, and if we go to our hyper shader, and we delete all this, and just make it again. Just remember, if Arnold's not there, that Windows Settings, Preferences, and Plugin Manager will take you there. Just make sure you come down to Arnold, click on Surface, find that AI Standard Surface, and click on that. You can like dial things in here, but once I've got it selected, the Attribute Editor actually just gives you more options. So dial the color up to 1, click the checker box for color, select File, click the folder, and just come into where you've got all that stuff saved. And so what we want to do, so the shader hasn't actually been assigned to that, so we want to make sure that we've got that shader assigned. So you can click, right click and assign to material, or you can also just middle mouse and drag and drop. And now you can see we're starting to get some of those materials. And of course this is like super shiny, so that's not really gonna work. I'm gonna click this little arrow to dive back up to here. And so remember, you want to use the color, not necessarily the weight. So if we go to specular, we click color and file and folder. We should have, it doesn't look like they gave us a spec one. We can make our own spec one though, and I think I showed you how to do that. And that's just by opening the main color in Photoshop. I know Substance will do that. We just selected a parameter or one of the exporting parameters that doesn't do that. You would think since we selected Arnold that it would, but it didn't. So, but we can quickly just affect this ourselves. So if I go up to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, take the saturation out, Image, Adjustments, and let's go to Levels. We'll just kind of crush these. So the brights are bright and the darks are dark. Okay, and we'll just save that. Save it as TIFF. Let's call this spec. And okay. Let's try that again. I didn't uncheck layers, so we'll try that again. Name that spec. Save. I want to replace it. I don't want any image compression, and okay. So back to Maya. You can click this. Select my spec map. And again, this little arrow right here will always take you back up to your shader. And so you can just kind of start coming through here and hooking things up. So your normal map, just remember, will go into your bump map. And so we'll just click little checker, little file. We'll just want to change this to tangent space normals because it was on bump. And then we'll click the little checker. And oh no, we don't want to add that for depth. Sorry about that. Our file is actually right here, or we can also click this little arrow and it'll take us over to file 3. And this is where we would come in and select and go to our normal. Click that, and we should start getting some normal depth information and stuff like that in here. And so this is where you just kind of start, and then you can play around with the depth of the normal and all that sort of stuff. So you can really dial that in for as intense as you want it to be as well. So keep that in mind. So that's kind of a good tidbit as well. But yeah, get in there and play around with Substance. And oh, the other thing I might mention to you too. So if we go here under Arnold, so if we click this under Arnold, if we open this up, we should see subdivisions. And right now it's set to none. And I might just illustrate this by pulling up the renderer. And oh yeah, we need to make some lights. We'll just do, I'm just going to make a physical skylight just so you can get the sense what I'm talking about. Okay, so, oops, really zoomed in on that. Okay, so clicking back on our object, we can actually smooth this at render time. If we change the subdivisions to Cat Clark, it'll actually start to smooth. And then we have, because if it's set to none, it's not smoothing at all. And iterations is actually smoothing at one time. 0 would be not smoothing it, 1 would be smoothing it, and so forth. So I think that's the main stuff we covered. I did just, oh, you know, one thing we didn't talk about that we did the other day was, and I know this was, I went over this in the last video, but this would be in, as far as softening your edges and things like that. So you can always soften edges or harden edges, or, you know, really click, you know, get in here and like how much is that going to be softened. That would be more for the exporting, that sort of stuff. I just forgot to mention that in the other video, but again, that was just under the mesh display, and you can play with harden or soften, or get in here and dial that in as well. Okay, so I think that covers all the basics that we touched bases on. It should give you a review. Just let me know if there's anything else that you need to look at, or have any other questions or anything like that. Just let me know. So anyway, hope this helps.